Salut à tous! It's a rest day in the World Cup, so as you'd expect, I'm going to take full advantage of that. No rugby today, but lots of conversation, of course. The main question, who's going to win the World Cup? Well, the bookmakers are making lots of noise about that one. In London especially, they're making a lot of noise about the national team there. Can they do it with or without Johnny Wilkinson?
London, its brick houses and its world-renowned bookmakers, also known as the bookies. Companies are in competition to find the best spots for their shops, and most of them can be found on the busy streets of the capital. Bookies are part of British culture, and according to them, 10% of the population pays them a visit on an infrequent basis. An event like the Rugby World Cup has brought to them new clients, some from the Southern Hemisphere, but also some English people.
Prior to the start of the tournament, there was an influx of people coming in to bet on England. I think they were carried away by the patriotic spirit and about our great result last time. But since the start of the tournament and after the South African game, certainly I haven't taken a bet on England to win it.
It's impossible to establish the profile of the typical bookies regular. In this shop located in the posh Mayfair area, pensioners mix with street sweepers and bankers. They bet sums depending on what they can afford, but especially according to the odds offered. Experienced players usually aim for teams which aren't the bookmakers' favourites.
I'm thinking to put New Zealand, but New Zealand's like heavily backed favourites, but the price for New Zealand's like 4-9. I'd rather get a reasonable, good price with South Africa. I reckon they've got a good chance, South Africa, to beat the old nations. England, no good and everything. I was about to back France, but they lost the first day against Argentina. What's that about? So I said, skip that.
Bookmakers are open to any type of bet, and the most unusual ones often end up on the front page of British tabloids.
Even as recently as maybe 20 years ago, horse racing would account for probably up to 90% of our business if you included greyhound racing with it. Today it would be less than 50%, and the other sports have really come along and impose themselves on the betting turnover. And at the same time, we've seen a big boom in betting on things like politics, not only British politics. The French presidential election was a good money spinner for us, so will the US presidential election be.
In England, people have been betting for more than 300 years, mostly on horse races, but not only. Any major sporting event such as the Rugby World Cup attracts a lot of customers to the bookies. There are over 9,000 betting shops throughout the country, but they've only been allowed since 1961. My turn to place a couple of bets on South Africa, a solid and surprise team of the tournament, and on France with generous odds of 10-1. South Africa and France, please.
We often talk about a rising interest in rugby worldwide, and this World Cup's kind of shown how it's getting bigger and bigger. But there's another example as well. There's a group of street kids from Calcutta who've come to Paris for a special rugby lesson from the trainer of Stade Francais, no less.
The players of this Indian team are a bit shy when they are welcomed to Paris by the French Miss India. These youths used to live in the streets and train stations of Calcutta. An Indian NGO then helped them to form a rugby team.
Many of them take the opportunity to go to the school, and the rugby team was then introduced as an activity for them so that they can be together, learn to be a team and work together, which is something that they may not always know from living in the railway stations.
The Indian squad received some advice from the professional players of the Paris team, the Stade Francais, and from their sponsor Fabien Galtier, the former French captain.
What's important is that thanks to the game of rugby, they're happy. They've come from the streets, they're orphans and have nothing. Rugby can give a meaning to their lives.
The Indian players discuss who might win this World Cup. Sanj Hidas thinks it might be a team from the Northern Hemisphere.
We have come here to support France. Yeah, we like France. I remember last time they lost semi-final. Yeah, it was unlucky, but I hope this year they will win the World Cup.
During their stay in France, the squad from Calcutta will be able to test their level against local teams in the towns of Nantes and Toulouse, the heartland of French rugby.
Sadly, that's all we've got time for today, but please don't cry. We'll be back tomorrow with 2 great games, Canada versus Japan and Romania against Portugal. Also, don't forget our rugby blog on FRANCE24-EN-Rugby-September. I wish you great rugby, great matches, a great celebration afterwards, whatever happens, but for now, just have a rest. See you tomorrow.